Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another episode of Tales from the Tacklezone. This is our series of weekly Blood Bowl battle reports, and this is battle report number 5 that is fought between my two friends, King Khalifa as well as Dark Lord Mac. King Khalifa is bringing the Reikland Reavers, a human Blood Bowl team, while Dark Lord Mac is bringing the Skavenblight Scramblers, a Skaven Blood Bowl team. So, things right now are not looking very good for the Reikland Reavers. They're so far a 0-2 record with 0 wins as well as 2 losses, while the Skavenblight Scramblers are bringing a 1-win, 1-draw victory so far. So this is game number 5 of our 7-game season, and with that being said, we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what the teams are bringing for this one, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll. Alright, so that takes us really directly to the kickoff for the first half of the game. The Reikland Reavers are kicking the ball while the Skavenblight Scramblers are receiving. And for the result on the kickoff table, this one was known as Blitz. And basically what ends up happening is that it allows human players to move into defensive positions real quick, so that way they can get a really good defensive stance against their opponents. And as you can see, we have a pretty good screen on both sides of the teams on opposite sides of the line of scrimmage. We have linemen as well as the rat ogre right in the center there for the Skavenblight Scramblers, as well as the regular ogre, as well as some linemen on the right-hand side for the Reikland Reavers. We also have blitzers as well as gutter runners on the left-hand side for the Skavenblight Scramblers. Those guys are deployed in the wide end zones. At the same time, we have blitzers as well as linemen lined up for the Reikland Reavers as well. And then, of course, we have throwers and catchers on both sides deployed as usual. So basically, this is the way the board looks after the defenders move into position. As you can see, King Khalifa pretty much moved up all of his players forward, so that way they're within the tackle zone of pretty much all the Skavenblight Scramblers. At the same time, he decides to throw a couple of blocks of this ogre as well as his linemen directly to the center to kind of blow up the center line, so that way his troops can kind of move in and try to go for the ball as well. At the same time, as you can see, the ball has landed perfectly right between the two throwers for the Skavenblight Scramblers there on the left-hand side. And as you can see, a couple of blocks have went through, as well as several pushes as well on the white zones. And so that pretty much leaves very little room for the Skavenblight Scramblers to weave through on their first drive of the play. And here's a close-up of the ball landing smack dab in the middle between the two throwers for the Skavenblight Scramblers. It was actually pretty crazy because the ball originally, I think, landed behind them, and then it kind of bounced back 2 spaces as well as 1 space over directly right smack dab in the center, which is really advantageous for Dark Lord Mac because he can be able to pick up the ball real quick. Alright, so with that being said, that takes us directly to Skavenblight Scramblers turn number 1, and unfortunately for my friend Dark Lord Mac, he had a pretty short drive on this one. First of all, Skaven player number 12 was his Toxiad. Basically, he is the gutter runner that's in the bottom corner of the screen there, in the very bottom of the center. Basically, he tries to push human player number 3, Andre Gaffig, manages to put him 1 square away from actually falling off the edge and being pushed off into the crowd. At the same time, the Rat Ogre, player number 13, Scalpific, tries to block human player number 11, but unfortunately for him though, when he rolled his 2 dice because he was stronger, he ended up with a knockdown result for both players. So both human player number 11 as well as Scalpific, those guys just kind of go crashing down and pretty much ends the play for this first drive of the first half of the game. So here's a close-up, as you can see on the bottom of the screen there. That's where you can see Toxiad, the gutter runner, pushing Andre Gaffig directly towards the out-of-bounds line. At the same time, you can see right smack dab in the middle on the top of the screen where Scalpific tries to block human player number 11, Barthold Reese, and ends with both knockdown result. And that pretty much ends the drive for turn number 1 for the Skaven. So with that, we go to the very first play of turn number 1 for the humans, and unfortunately it's a very short-lived turn for this drive as well. Human player number 4, his name is Aegis Koenig, he tries to block Skaven player number 3, Chargadek the Dominator, which is one of the blitzers right there in the center of the screen. He tries to attack him, but unfortunately for him though, he gets an attacker down result. It's because he just kind of drops down, and because of that, ends the very first drive for human turn number 1 on this play. So here's a close-up of that shot at the very top center of the screen here in the wide zone. You can see the two the human linemen as well as the Skaven blitzer crashing to each other and both getting knocked down, which immediately causes a turnover, and that takes directly to Skaven turn number 2. So here's an overhead shot of turn number 2 for the Skavenblight Scramblers. As you can see, they've actually had quite a lot of things occurring in this turn. A lot of things going off. Pretty much for the most part, the Skavenblight Scramblers try to skirt around the top wide zone, try to flank around the top lines of the Reikland Reavers in order to make their way directly to the end zone. The very first play was with Skaven player number 4. His name is Mage. He actually pushes back human player number 8, Madrid Hofer, and actually causes an opening for the rest of the Skaven to kind of exploit the main line, the main line of scrimmage, going around the top of the skirt. This is followed up by Skaven player number 3, Targeted Dominator. He managed to push human player number 10, Tillman Becker, out of the way as well, just opening up that gap and allowing the players to move through. Now, Skaven player number 1, which is one of the throwers, his name is Plague Rule the Infected. He manages to pick up the ball, and he just runs the ball as quickly as he can through that gap in the opening. At the same time, Skaven player number 2, Monstack, he's also another thrower. He moves, and he kind of goes for it as well, just so that way he has 2 throwers going through that top gap, so that way they can make it through. While that's occurring, on the bottom of the screen there, as you can see in the center, that's Skaven player number 12, Toxiad the Gutter Runner. He managed to push human player number 3, Andre Gaffig, into the crowd. The crowd, of course, gives him an injury of a stun result, so he goes face down on the square, and he's got to roll up to see if he gets back on his feet again. The very last play actually occurs right there in the center of the screen with Skaven player number 6, Vadarik the Sneak. He tries to throw a block directly into human player number 2, Comrade Frolik, which is actually one of the throwers for the teams. Unfortunately for him, a catcher. Unfortunately for him, when he tries to tackle that guy, ends up with a tackle to down result. So because of that, that pretty much ends a very large drive for Skaven turn number 2. And here's a close-up of the top of the screen like we talked about earlier. There's that gap between the main line of scrimmage as the Skavenblight Scramblers start to exploit. They have blockers as well as linemen moving through to the center there to protect their 2 throwers. You can see Plague Rule the Infected. He is also carrying the ball as he's making it away, as Monstack, the other thrower, player number 2, as he tries to take point as well. It's actually a good position for the Skavenblight Scramblers to do that, because if all else fails, Plague Rule could pass the ball directly to player number 2, Monstack, who can then take it and run it to the end zone, or they have a lot of options available to them. At the same time, their players are also protected by their 2 linemen right there in the center as well to make sure they don't get attacked. At the same time, they don't have to worry about the blitzer in the top of the screen either, because that guy, which is Scythe of Skavenblight, which is the gun runner, he's got the tackle zone directly onto that blitzer, so that way they're completely protected from that point. And here's the action in the bottom half of the screen, the wide zone. You can see that Toxiad managed to push, Andre Gaffig directly into the crowd, so that blitzer is down with a stun result. Now on the top of the screen there in the upper left-hand corner, you can see where that player tries to tackle the catcher, Comrade Fulik, but he goes down, which pretty much ends the drive on that part. And once again, here's that close-up real quick of that lineman trying to knock down Conrad Frolik. His name is Vadarik the Sneak. Unfortunately for him, he ended up with a hacker result, down result, so he goes crashing the ground and pretty much ends the drive for turn number 2 for the Skavenblight Scramblers, which is a pretty big play for them. So with that being said, we go directly to human turn number 2. And human turn number 2, as you can see in this photo, things start turning the other side real quick. It ends up happening that humans manage to capture the ball after doing some defensive plays, and they start making the offense heading directly towards the Skavenblight Scramblers end zone. So let's go and talk about exactly what happened. First of all, it started off with human player number 10. His name is Tillman Becker. He's a lineman. He managed to push Skaven player number 5, Morphin, out of the way, so that way it kind of adds a bigger gap on the top of the screen, so that way the humans can counterattack with that line. After that, human player number 13, which is Thargal the Immovable, that is the Ogre. He basically blitzes into Skaven player number 1, Plague Rule the Infected, and he's the guy who's carrying the ball for the Skavenblight Scramblers. He managed to throw a block into him and managed to take him down, which caused the ball to fumble. It actually fumbles up to the wide zone up there in the top. In the end, what ended up happening is that catcher number 2, his name is Conrad Frolik, he moves from the bottom of the screen behind the main line of scrimmage for the Skavenblight Scramblers, and he picks up the ball and he goes for it twice, landing 2 squares right behind the main line of scrimmage for the Skavenblight Scramblers. Human player number 5, which name is Landrick Mackold, he moves in to protect him from the back to make sure no one can tackle him. At the same time, human player number 6 tries to do exactly the same thing, as you can see there on the top left corner of the screen. Unfortunately, he tries to go for it 1 additional square, so that way he's within the tackle zone to protect Conrad Frolik, but he fails, and he basically just kind of crashes to the ground and slips, and that causes an immediate turnover for human turn number 2. So So here's a close-up of the action that's taking place at the top of the wide zone. As you can see there, you can see Comrade Froelich. He's got the ball on the base of his on the base of him, and he's the guy who's trying to make it all the way to the end zone as well. Pretty much when the Skavenblight Scramblers kind of went through the line of scrimmage at the top of the screen, they created that gap, which also allowed at the same time for the human players to kind of go through and exploit that as well. And so because they're able to do so, and there's not that many defenders there, they're basically able to punch a hole to the line and allow their catcher to skirt it from behind and catch the ball and move up. At the same time, at the bottom there, you can see Max Herzog, who tried to move in to defend Comrade Froelich, but unfortunately he slips, and that causes the turnover for this turn. So that takes directly to Skaven turn number 3, which unfortunately for them is not very, very epic at all. Actually, they only ended with one action. Skaven player number 4, his name is Amumage, who's a blocker. He tries to blitz directly into human player number 2, Comrade Froelich, which is the guy carrying the ball. Unfortunately, though, when he hits him, though, he suffered an attacker down result. So because of that, he just drops down, and nothing really much happens from there, and just pretty much ends the drive for Skaven turn number 3. So here's a close-up of that blitzer. His name is Amumage. He does try to blitz directly into Comrade Froelich, but he fails, unfortunately. And that guy, Comrade Froelich, man, he's been pretty lucky so far because he's been blocked into twice already, and he managed to survive both times. And that pretty much ends the drive for Skaven turn number 3. So that being said, we go directly to the top of human turn number 3. And here's an overhead shot of the field of play taking place, and as you can see there, pretty much my friend King Khalifa did only one thing only, and that was to activate Comrade Froelich, who decides to run all the way across the Skavenblight's half of the field directly into the end zone, which makes sense because catchers have a movement of 8, so they're very, very quick on that one. And with that, that causes a touchdown for the Reikland Reavers on this one. So far, the Reikland Reavers are leading the touchdown score 1-0 for the Skavenblight Scramblers. And with that, that causes immediate turnover, and both players line up again, another for a kickoff to take place. Alright, so that takes us directly to the kickoff for this first half of the game, and once again, it ends up being a high kick on this one. And in case you're unfamiliar with the high kick, what ends up happening is when the ball kind of rockets up into the air, it allows the human player, the receiving team, to move their player directly where the ball would land, so that way they can catch it immediately and they can start off the game that way as well. And that was the result for the kickoff on that one. We'll focus that here in a second. But as you can see in this photo, once again, the line of play between both teams is actually, once again, kind of mirrored from the first turn. This time around, though, looks like my friend Dark Lord Mac decided to put his Rat Ogre in the wide zone at the top of the screen. I think he's doing that because he wants to maneuver to the left-hand side. I'm really not sure what his play was on this one because I'm just the arbitrator in this battle report, and I'm just taking the photos. But as you can see, that's exactly what he kind of does there. Pretty much the same mirror lineup as always: gutter runners and blitzers on the wide zones, linemen in the center, catchers in the back. So anyways, like I said before, the kickoff result ended up being a high kick. We're going to show exactly what happened for that one. So with the high kick, the ball actually scatters just 2 spaces behind the line of scrimmage for the Skavenblight Scramblers, so that ends up being a really close drive for them, which is pretty awesome as well. And as you can see in this photo, Plague Roll the Infected is elected by Dark Lord Mac to catch the ball. So you can see he's just 2 squares behind the line of scrimmage, which is really good for them because they can really make up the distance in really short time. So with the kickoff over with, we go directly to the top of the next turn for the Skaven. And that starts us off with Skaven turn number 4. So starting up in the wide zone at the very top of the screen, Skaven player number 13, the Rat Ogre, that is Scalpific. He managed to push back human player number 10, Tillman Becker, back a space towards the border of the out-of-bounds line, and he also, of course, follows through to make to kind of continue through with his offense. At the same time, Skaven player number 8, Icaster the Burnt, he blitzes into human player number 3, Andre Gaffig, ends up with a defender down result. And not only does he manage to knock that guy down, he also manages to stun him as well. And what this does is, between the Rat Ogre attacking the top there, as well as this guy, Icaster the Burnt, knocking down that player on the blitzer on the right hand side, that once again opens up a hole on the wide zone for the Skavenblight Scramblers to exploit it real quick. So as you can see, that kind of allows them to run through that line in the hole, in the line again once again. This is quickly followed through by Skaven player number 6, Fatarix the Sneak, who then goes into human player number 11, Burnthold Reese, who actually manages to push him back from the main line of scrimmage down to the center of the screen, so that way you have that nice little gap for the Skavenblight Scramblers to move through. Now, of course, the rest of the team moves up forward in order to get within the tackle zones of their human counterparts in the bottom wide zone as well as the bottom part of the center line, so that way those players really can't go anywhere as well. And at the same time while that's occurring, he decides to move up Plague Roll the Infected. He takes point, slips through the line that's on the top of the wide zone, so that way he can make it directly to the end zone, and then Mondstack quickly follows up behind him as well, so that way they can exploit and hopefully get a touchdown. So here's a close-up of the bottom half of the screen, so that way you can see how the blitzers, the gutter runner, as well as the linemen, how they're basically just kind of pushing their opponents and just kind of like making sure that they can't escape to exploit. Probably the most dramatic portion of the play was right here in the center of the screen, where you can see that blitzer. Not only does he manage to push that lineman back, that blitzer back as well, he also managed to push back the catcher as well, so that way they're just a little bit further when they originally were in the main line. Here's a close-up of the center, and the reason why this photo is so important is because, as you can see there, you can kind of see him, but that's Fadorek the Sneak. He's the player who pushed Bernhold Reese out of the way. He pushed him right behind the Ogre, which allowed that main line to open up between the wide zone as well as the center field. So that way you can see, Mondstack there in the back left-hand corner, as well as Ikast the Burnt moving forward as well. At the same time, you can see Toxiad moving through as well in order to exploit that opening there in the main line of scrimmage. And finally, here's a close-up of the Rat Ogre's Scalpific as he pushes his player directly towards the end zone, out-of-bounds line. You can see that the two throwers, as well as one of the blitzers, as well as a gutter runner, slipping through the main lines, patch that catcher, trying to make their way directly to the end zone. And that pretty much ends the drive for the Skaven player on this turn. So that takes directly to human turn number 4, and actually a lot has actually happened for the human team on the top of the screen, primarily up on the top wide zone there. Pretty big play for the humans on this turn. So first of all, human catcher number 2, Conrad Froelich, he decides to block directly into Skaven player number 1, Plague Roll the Infector. Ends up with an attacker down result, which means that the ball fumbles. And once again, the ball fumbles, and Skaven player number 11, Scythe of Skavenblight, he manages to catch the ball, which is kind of great for him because, he's a gutter runner, and that's what he can do. He can move pretty quick. However, human player number 3, Andre Gaffig, then blocks Scythe of Skavenblight, manages to push him back, which caused the ball to fumble once again. And this time the ball kind of bounces right behind Scalpific and just kind of lays there on the ground for the most part. Now, human player number 6, Max Herzog, he also blocks directly into Skaven player number 5, Morphin, ends up with a knocked out result. So because of that, he puts him directly into the dugout for the rest of the remainder of this first half. And then human player number 7, he does try to block directly into Skaven player number 4, Amomage, which is a blitzer. Unfortunate for him, though, end up with a attacker down results because that deck bar Grindelwald goes crashing to the ground and also ends the drive for the human players on this turn. So once again, here's the top of the screen. As you can see, this is probably the most dramatic of all the plays that took place. As you can see, human player number 2, he goes directly into Plague Rule the Infected, which caused the ball to bounce. Of course, it goes to that blitzer who managed to catch the ball, but then human lineman number 3, blitzer number 3, he managed to hit that blitzer as well, push him back, which caused the ball to land right behind the Ogre right over there. And that's where the ball kind of lands for this first half of the game. And here's a close-up of human player number 7, who tries to go crashing directly into Skaven player number 5, Morphin, but ends up getting a knocked down attacker knocked down result. So because of that, that pretty much ends the blitz, the drive on this play. And finally, here's a close-up of Skaven player number 5, Morphin, because he is currently knocked out, so he's put back into the dugout box as he tries to recover his senses and try to move on. And that pretty much ends up this one. So with that being said, we go directly to Skaven turn number 5. And in Skaven turn number 5 ended up being a very dramatic moment for the Skavenblight Scramblers. First of all, Skaven player number 2, he's a thrower named Mondstack. He runs up and picks up the ball. Not only does he manage to pick up the ball, then he throws it to Skaven player number 12, Toxiad, which is one of the gutter runners. He manages to catch the ball and does a successful pass, earning them star points, player points, of course. And then Toxiad, he just runs as quick as he can through the second half of the human side of the field. And since Toxiad is a gutter runner, he does have movement 9, which makes him really, really quick. And as you can see there, he ends up directly in the end zone for the team and scoring his team a touchdown. So here's a close-up of Mondstack, of the image of Mondstack picking up the ball and then lobbing it directly to Toxiad, the gutter runner. And here's Toxiad scoring a touchdown for the Skavenblight Scramblers. So once again, as you can see there, really excellent play by my friend Dark Lord Mac. Managed to throw the ball directly to that gutter runner, and gutter runners are really good, not only at taking out your opponents, but acting as wide receivers too for the team. As you can see there, he just kind of just flies across the pitch with his movement of 9 directly into the end zone. So that being said, the Skavenblight Scramblers and the Reikland Reavers are currently tied 1-1, and once again, my friends organize their players for another kickoff. So once again, both teams are once again lined up, and this time, as you can see, there's actually a lot of players this time. Instead of doing like the screening type of defense on both sides, pretty much all the players on both sides are lined up directly along the lane line of scrimmage as well. Now the kickoff result on this one, as the Skavenblight Scramblers kick the ball to the Reikland Reavers, and ends up being a rock thrown is what ended up happening. So because of that, human player number 1, Abelhard Fruick, which is actually the thrower for this team, he gets nailed with a rock and gets a casualty result as well, getting a badly hurt result for his injury. So because of that, that he is no longer participating in the rest of the battle report and in the game because he's currently recovering from a concussion that of a huge boulder just getting lobbed in his head directly, which is actually kind of sad. So here's a result of the badly hurt injury for what's his name, for Abelhard Freud, the thrower. He just goes crashing face down because a block got thrown in his head, and this is where initially the ball originally landed when the kickoff result got taken care of. And here's where the ball's final destination ended up going. It actually moved back 8 spaces to the upper right-hand corner of the field of play, and as you can see there, it's just 1 square away from the end zone, all the way in the back corner. And unfortunately for my friend King Khalifa, all of his players are pretty much lined up along the line of scrimmage, so he has nobody he can really send back in order to get the ball. So things are not looking very good for the Reikland Reavers at this point. Alright, so that takes directly to human turn number 5 on this one. So the very first act that my friend King Khalifa does, he activates human player number 2, Comrade Frolic. That guy actually moves back his 8 spaces to go pick up the ball, and he manages to successfully pick up the ball, so the ball's on his base, and that's the guy in the upper right-hand corner as well. While that's occurring, human player number 4, Aegis Koenig, who's actually a blitzer, he decides to go directly into Skaven player number 6, Fadric the Sneak, actually gets a stun result on that guy, which kind of opens up the line of play for them. At the same time, human player number 10, Tillman Becker, he tries to blitz directly into Skaven player number 11, Scythe of Skavenblight, which is the gun runner on the top of the white zone there. Unfortunately, ended up with an attacker result, knockdown result. So because of that, he goes crashing down, and that pretty much ends the play for human turn number 5. So here's a close-up of Comrade Frolic moving up and picking up the ball, so that way he can start participating in the game and trying to move the ball as quick as they can down the field towards the Skavenblight Scramblers end zone. And here's a close-up of the action taking place at the top of the screen with Aegis Koenig knocking over Fadric the Sneak, and as well as human player number 10 trying to blitz directly into Scythe the Skavenblight, but unfortunately fails his attack and it gets knocked down instead. So that being said, we go directly to the top of Skaven player number 6. And once again, that Rat Ogre for turn number 6 for the Skaven, he fails his block. Skaven player 13, Scalpific the Rat Ogre, tries directly to go into Max Herzog, human player number 6, ends up with a attacker down result as well. To make matters worse, my buddy Dark Lord Mac does try to do a reroll, uses one of his rerolls in order to do so, and once again gets exactly the same result. So because of that, that Rat Ogre goes crashing to the ground as well, because human player number 6, Max Herzog, is made out of steel. And here's a close-up of that very dramatic play with the Rat Ogre crashing the ground, because human player number 6, Max Herzog, that homie don't play that game. So that takes directly to human play number 6 on this one, and unfortunately the play is not that impressive. It just actually consists of one action. That was human play number 2, Conrad Fullock. He moves all the way his maximum movement allowance with the ball as quick as he can, but he decides to kind of go for it as well, because he's trying to make up for lost time, because he only's got 2 more turns before he fails. And unfortunately for him, the very first square he tries to go for it in, he fails his initiative his agility check. It's because that he trips, he falls, and he stumbles the ball 1 space to his left, which is actually just all kinds of bad for the Reikland Reavers at this point. So here's a close-up at the top of the screen. You can see that Comrade Frolic, as he tries to run, he slips, and the ball fumbles over 1 square as well, which pretty much ends the play for this first half of the game. Alright, so that takes us directly to Skaven play number 7 on this one, and once again, Scalpific, that Rat Ogre, he tries to throw another block. He gets back on his feet again and tries to block player number 6, Max Herzog, and once again he gets a knockdown result as a result of that as well. And my buddy Dark Lord Mac does use up his very last reroll to try to, re-roll that result. End up being the exact same result as last time. So because of that Rat Ogre goes crashing the ground, and Max Herzog is definitely the man, because he's been blitzed, blocked twice by a Rat Ogre and managed to survive both times, which is absolutely insane. And here's a close-up of that action taking place at the top of the screen as well, which is all kinds of sad for the Skavenblight Scramblers at this point. So that takes us directly to human turn number 7. Once again, Comrade Frolic does try to get back on his feet again, and he does move into the square to pick up the ball again, but this time around he failed his agility check in order to pick up the ball. So once again, the ball goes out of his hand and it fumbles 1 more square over, and pretty much ends the drive for the human players for turn number 7. And as you can see in this photo, human player number 2, this is all kinds of sad because the ball fumbles 1 more square, and that pretty much ends the drive for this one. And at this point, that my friends decide just to skip the rest of the turns because they know they can't make a touchdown in time, and that pretty much ends the first half of this game. So with the first half of the game over with, we take a short break for some commercial messages, and you can see exactly what the score is for the first half of the game. Alright, so that takes us directly to the second half of the game. We go directly to the kickoff on this one, and the kickoff result ends up being a perfect defense on this one. The Skavenblight Scramblers are kicking the ball off to the Reikland Reavers on this one. And so as you can see in this photo, for the most part, most of the players are exactly what they need to be for Dark Lord Max. He doesn't move any of his players so much. Everyone's just kind of like this kind of screen defense going on for the Skavenblight Scramblers, while the humans have kind of like this nice little offense kind of stacked up as well, with catchers in the wide zone as well as blitzers as well. And as you can see there, the ball just kind of lands a square right in front of the new thrower. The new thrower came into sub in. That's player number 2 for the Reikland Reavers. That guy's name is, what's his name? Look at the list here. Deckmar Grunewald is his name. So he's the new thrower that's coming in to sub in for the first guy who got taken out. So now that the result is over with, we've scattered the ball. As you can see, it scatters over two positions over to the right-hand side. So you can see there's kind of right there, right behind the main line of scrimmage, which is the ball's final destination on this one. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 1 for the humans. So as you can see in this photo, for the most part, the human catcher thrower tries to move down in order to pick up the ball as well. At the same time, a couple of tackles take place as well to kind of break some holes in the lines of the Skavenblight Scramblers. First of all, human player number 3, Andre Gaffig, he tries to throw a block directly into Skaven player number 3. His name is Charkatek the Dominator, who's one of the blitzers for the Skavenblight Scramblers. Managed to put a knockdown result on that guy as well. So because that, he goes crashing face down to the ground and is completely stunned at that point, which is actually kind of cool. Now, human player number 7, Deckmar Grunewald, he does try to pick up the ball, and he tries to pass the ball directly into human player number 8, Mandred Hofer, but unfortunately for him though, Mandred Hofer, the catcher, fails to catch the ball, and the ball bounces over to the left-hand side, 1 square over. And so because of that, that immediately ends the play and causes immediate turnover to the Skavenblight Scramblers. So here's a close-up of Andre Gaffig, the blitzer, stunning, trying to get the Dominator, as well as a close-up of Mandred Hofer, dropping the ball and making it scatter 1 space over. And that pretty much ends the drive for the Reikland Reavers on this one. So with that, that takes us directly to Skavenblight turn number 2 on this one. As you can see in this photo, it just kind of ended up being kind of rough for the Skavenblight Scramblers. First of all, Skaven player number 10, his name is Korpenrot. He decides to blitz directly into human player number 8, Mandred Hofer, in order to knock him down to make sure that ball is out of his tackle zone. The reason why I think he did that is so that way his gun runner there on the bottom, Taxiat, can then slip in, pass his tackle zone, pick up the ball, and go for it. Unfortunately, Korpenrot, though, fails to do so. He actually gets a tacker down result as well. A reroll was used in order to try to recorrect that, but eventually ended up being exactly the same result again. So because of that, Korpenrot goes crashing face down to the ground. And here's a close-up of Korpenrot going face down to the ground after trying to fail to attack human player number 8, Mandred Hofer, and ends up being a tackle result being played on that one. So with that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 2 for the humans. Alright, so now we go to human turn number 2 on this one, and probably the most dramatic. You can see a lot of dramatic plays took place on the bottom half of the screen, on the bottom wide zone there. First of all, human player number 8, Mandred Hofer, managed to run up, pick up the ball, and then he basically goes his 7 spaces over directly past the end zone, slipping through the hole caused between Taxiat as well as Charkatek the Dominator, and slipping right between the two of them and moving directly towards the end zone as well. He does go for it twice, so because it does do additional 2 moves of space, and he ends up there as well. At the same times, human player number 4, Aegis Koenig, he tries to block Skaven player number 6, Fedok the Sneak, but unfortunately he is knocked down as a result of that, which is the main line of scrimmage there in the center of the screen. So because of that, pretty much ends the drive. But not before King Khalifa moves a lot of his players, a lot of his linemen and blitzers, you can see here, moving them through that gap in the center in order to protect Mandred Hofer to make it to the end zone as well. So here's a close-up of Mandred Hofer trying to make his way directly to the Skavenblight Scramblers end zone. And he's actually pretty well protected by 2 human linemen as well as a blitzer as well. And here's a close-up of human player number 4, Aegis Koenig, as he tries to block directly into Skaven player number 6, Fedok the Sneak, but is knocked down as a result of that, and he goes crashing to the ground, and also ending the play for human turn number 2 on this one. So with that, takes us directly to Skaven turn number 3 on this one, and once again, the Skavenblight Scramblers try to move as quickly as they can in order to try to intercept Mandred Hofer from actually doing that. So first of all, Skaven player number 12, which is Taxiat the Gutter Runner, he actually slips through along the wide zone there at the bottom of the screen to try to blitz directly into Mandred Hofer. Now to do so, though, he has to go through 2 squares of Tillman Becker's tackle zone in order to do that. Now luckily for my friend Dark Lord Mac, he managed to dodge both squares out of Tillman Becker's tackle zone, so he slips right through and goes directly into Madrid Hofer and tries to tackle him down his blitz. Unfortunate for him though, he failed his attack on that one. Ended up being an attacker down result as a result of that. Once again, Dark Lord Mac does try to use up his last reroll for the second half of the game in order to try to stop it, but unfortunately ended up being exactly the same result again. So because of that, he goes crashing down, and the Reikland Reavers are completely fine on that one. And here's a close-up with Toxiad as he gets an attacker down result trying to blitz directly into Madrid Hofer. And it was pretty impressive because he managed to dodge out of a tackle zone of a lineman twice in order to do that. So kind of sad. At the same time, Dark Lord Mac also used up his very last reroll in order to do that as well. So with that takes directly to human turn number 3, and as you can see in this one, my friend King Khalifa activates Madrid Hofer, who basically moves up his 8 movement squares directly into Skavenblight Scramblers' end zone and manages to score a touchdown for his team. And touchdown number 2 for the Reikland Reavers on this one. So as you can see in this photo, Madrid Hofer manages to make it all the way to the end zone, earns himself a star player point in the process of doing so as well, and also putting the Reikland Reavers 2-1 on this game 5 of our campaign. So both teams, of course, go back to the line of scrimmage again and line up again for another kickoff, and that takes us directly to the next turn. Alright, so that takes us directly to the next kickoff again, and once again, the line of scrimmage is just pretty much the same kind of layout that we had before for the Reikland Reavers as well as the Skavenblight Scramblers. As you can see, we got our heavy hitters in the center with linemen at the line of scrimmage. We also got gutter runners as well as blitzers in the line of scrimmage in the wide zones as well, with 2 linemen in reserve and 2 catchers in reserve to receive the ball. For the Reikland Reavers, you got your ogre as well as 2 linemen in the center. On the immediate line of scrimmage, we got blitzers and linemen in the wide zones as well as 2 catchers and a lineman in the backfield as well, and of course you got your 1 thrower in the back. The kickoff result on this one ends up being a riot breaking out, so because of that, both teams lose a turn as well. And the ball comes to its final destination just 2 squares behind the main line of scrimmage as well, which is really good because it allows the Skavenblight Scramblers to make up some lost time because both of them lose a turn because of the riot that broke out in the second half of this game. So with that takes us directly to Skaven player turn number 4. On this one, of course, unfortunately, it's a very short play. Not much really happened for the most part. Scalpific does manage to knock down Thargal, the immovable, managed to push him back as well. So that way they can, open up the center line so that way they can kind of sweep in through the wide zones once again. Unfortunately, though, Skaven player number 8, it casts through the burnt. He tries to block human player number 5, Landrig Machold. And unfortunately for both those players, it ended up being a knockdown result for both players involved. So both of them go crash in the ground and also ended the drive on this one. So here's a close-up of the main line of scrimmage right here in the center. You can see that Scalpific managed to move Thargal, the immovable, and also knock him down and kind of follows through. At the same time, you can see it casts through the burnt, blocking Landrig Machold, and both of them getting knocked down as a result. Pretty much ends the drive for turn number 4 for the Skaven. So because of that, we go directly to the top of turn number 5 for the humans, and once again, the team actually got a really successful drive this turn around. First of all, human player number 8, catcher number 8, his name is Madrid Hofer. That guy managed to slip through the holes that are taking place at the top of the screen between the top wide zone and the center field, managed to slip through the lines there and then weave his way through to pick up the ball behind the Skavenblight Scramblers, and he starts moving forward as well, which is actually kind of a good success. He starts moving up as well. And as you can see in this photo, the rest of the team also moves up as quickly as they can as well to kind of help them out. You can see that Blitzer kind of moved through the center line, the center field right on the bottom wide zone, making his way to catch up as well as the other catcher going up to in front of him to kind of act as a blocker to stop those 2 throwers from getting into it as well. And pretty much the rest of the team just moves up forward, and that pretty much what ends the turn. Some blocks are thrown in the center portion there, so the 2 linemen in the center field are pushed back as well. Thargal, the immovable, just kind of gets back up on his feet again and gets inside the tackles on the Rat Ogre. And of course, players in the white fields, they move up to their respective players, and that pretty much ends the turn on this one. So here's a close-up of that dramatic play that was taking place by human player number 8, Madrid Hofer, as he weaves his way through the lines and picks up the ball. The other thrower of the team also gets into a blocking position to protect him, as well as that blitzer there in the bottom left-hand corner, so that way he doesn't get tackled as he tries to make his way directly to the end zone. So with that goes directly to Skaven turn number 5 on this one, and my friend Dark Lord Mac decides to activate Skaven player number 1, Plague Rule the Infected, as one of his throwers. It's act of desperation. He moves in to blitz him directly into Madrid Hofer by kind of going around the bottom and button hooking to the right-hand side. But unfortunately for him, though, he fails his attack. Attacker is knocked down, so because of that, he goes crashing down and also ends the game on this one. Not ends the game, sorry, ends the play on this drive. And here's a close-up of that failed blitz from Plague Roll the Infected, which is actually kind of interesting because he kind of did this interesting kind of button hook, so that way he skirts the first thrower's tackle zone and then comes in from the left-hand side to kind of like left hook him. But unfortunately for him, though, it just kind of failed, and that pretty much ends the play on that one. which once again takes us directly to human turn number 6 on this one. And as you can see in this photo, pretty much one action took place. King Khalifa decided to activate, once again, human player number 8, Madrid Hofer, and that guy goes skirting right past the line of scrimmage through the second half of the Skavenblight Scramblers side of the pitch and makes all the way to the end zone and manages to score a third touchdown for the Reikland Reavers. Touchdown number 3 for the Reikland Reavers on this one, and once again, Madrid Hofer manages to make that touchdown, makes it all the way to the end zone once again, scoring 3-1 for the Reikland Reavers against the Skavenblight Scramblers, at the same time also earning another star player point in the process of doing that. So once again, both teams of course line up in the center field again for another kickoff, and that takes us directly to another round of this game. Alright, so that takes us directly to the kickoff on this one, and once again the teams are all lined up in this pretty much the same kind of mirrored format they had before when they first started playing. Unfortunate for them though, when the kickoff result ended up happening, it ends up being a riot breaking out once again. So because of that, both teams lose another turn as the ball just kind of, as the fans and the crowd kind of go wild, and just the refs have to, calm everyone down to make sure the game keeps on going. So with the kickoff chart over with, we go directly to the ball's final destination. As you can see, it ends up being about 3 squares to the right of Plague Rule the Infected, and ends up pretty close to the end zone for the Skavenblight Scramblers on this one. So that being said, we go directly to the next turn for the Skavenblight Scramblers. So Skaven's turn number 7 ends up starting off for the bat. Pretty much the only thing that ended up happening is that my friend Darklord Matt decides to activate Skaven player number 1, Plague Rule the Infected. Plague Rule the Infected does move to go pick up the ball, but unfortunately for him though, he does fumble the ball, and the ball bounces over 1 square to the left. And as you can see in this photo, the ball just kind of skirts over to the left-hand side once again, and that pretty much ends the play for turn number 7 for the Skavenblight Scramblers. And at this point in the battle report, where my friend Darklord Matt decides to call the game because he knows he's not going to be able to make 2 touchdowns in the next 2 turns of the game. So because of that, the game ends with the Reikland Reavers scoring a victory on this game number 5, with Reikland Reavers scoring 3 touchdowns and the Skavenblight Scramblers only scoring 1. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go directly to the post game because this battle report is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Alright, so first of all, we're talking about the Skavenblight Scramblers on this one. Further injuries, they actually suffered no lasting injuries for any of their team members, and they'd also nobody to score enough star player points in order for them to advance to the next level at all. For the treasury, they managed to earn 20,000 gold pieces on this one, and they decided to put the entire thing directly into their treasury. Right now, their league point is currently at 4 points for the league, as well as scoring 5 touchdowns in total so far for the campaign. Their new record now is at 1 win and 1 loss, as well as 1 tie, and their current team value now is at 1,140,000 gold pieces. So pretty uneventful post game for the Skavenblight Scramblers. For the Reikland Reavers, on the other hand, they actually had quite a bit of a dramatic post game on this one. First of all, Abelhard Freud, the thrower, he suffered a casualty result from having a rock thrown in his head during the game. When they rolled for the injury on this one, he actually makes a badly hurt result, so because that makes a full recovery without any problems whatsoever. In the end, Madrid Hofer managed to get an advancement as well, learning the sure hand skills because they get to reroll agility checks, which is really useful for a catcher as well. For the treasury, the Reikland Reavers managed to score 70,000 gold pieces when it was all said and done. And with all 70,000 gold pieces, they purchased a additional reroll for their team, so now they have 4 rerolls, and they also additionally purchased 2 more for their fan factor as well. Their current league points sits directly at 6 points for the league. Their new record is at 1 win as well as 2 losses, and the new team value now is at 1,220,000 gold pieces. So that's going to do it for this one, you guys, for game number 5 of our Blood Bowl campaign. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out and stay classy.